So all the others, about 2,000, were dismissed to their barracks, and I was taken to a punishment room. They whipped me 15 strokes on my bare body, and 2 German guards were standing close by to be sure that I get maximum pain and minimum compassion. I have scars from that beating till this very day. I committed a crime. I gave away my watch for a promised loaf of bread. Somehow, miracle, God's will, I did survive that ordeal. And when I came out, my older brother was standing there thanking God that I was still alive. I was in that camp Lechamer on it for 4 months. In October 1942, the Germans decided to send me to another camp called Brande. By doing so, they separated me from my older brother, and from that moment I have never seen him again. After the war, when he didn't show up, I assumed that he perished like all the other 123 members of my family. But I had no idea where or when. But something very dramatic happened to me in New York City some years ago. There was a gathering of Holocaust survivors, and somebody approached me and he said to me, "You don't know me, but I know you. I was the bookkeeper in your father's business, and I remember you as a little child. I have to tell you something that you don't know. I, with my own hands, pushed your brother Samuel into the gas chamber in Auschwitz. This was his job. What the Germans did, they just turned on the Zyklon B gas, and all the other work was done by other prisoners. And he knew my brother from home. They were the same age. So he told me that he pushed my brother into the gas chamber." You see, this by itself is a very painful experience. Millions never had a funeral. They have no graves. We don't even have an anniversary of their demise. When we had the tragic event on September 11, 2001, watching television, I saw how those World Trade Center towers collapsed. What came to my mind? Are those people consumed in that inferno? Are they going to have a funeral, a grave? Apparently over 2,000 have never been identified. This by itself is a very painful experience to live with. It reminds me, the other day I spoke at Concordia University, and one of the students stands up, he says, "I know what you mean, because my brother drowned here in Oregon, and his body has never been recovered, and my mother is miserable that she cannot visit her son's grave." So this is a very painful experience. Especially for me, I come from a culture that we respected the departed. I used to visit my biological mother's grave at least 5 times a year. So today we don't have that luxury. As I mentioned before, they sent me to another camp called Brande. This was a very harsh winter. The commander in that camp was such a cruel man. He enjoyed torture. There's an expression in the German language which is called Schadenfreude. You are entertaining yourself by watching others suffering and dying. This is the kind of a person he was. I was in that camp only for 2 months. And one of the interesting points that I would like to mention, which is not in my book because it happened a few months ago. I got a telephone call from Michigan University, and somebody introduced himself that he is a German teaching German literature at Michigan University. And his father was involved in that Camp Brande. And he lived with a guilt feeling all his life. And he's looking for Holocaust survivors from that camp. And he found one in Australia and one in Canada. And now when he went to the internet and he found my book, and I mentioned in my book that camp, so that's the reason that he contacted me. And we were on the phone for quite a while. And it's more interesting, just last week he sent me an email that he wrote a paper on that camp, and he submitted it to Yad Vashem, to the Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem, which has been published, and he's mentioning me being in that camp. Anyway, it was a terrible, terrible camp. I was there only for 2 months. And from that camp I was sent to my third camp called Großmaslowitz, also in Germany. The conditions were very similar, the same kind of food, shelter, beating every day. In that camp I was there for 15 months. But there's one episode which happened to me in that camp which is extremely important in my life. And in all those thousands and thousands of letters that I received, over 40,000, there are many references to this episode that I'm going to share with you. And again, I appreciate that you are listening, but listen. And when you come home, try to analyze it. At one point, in that camp Großmaslowitz, I worked in a factory together with German employees. Mostly females, because men were drafted to the army. So the German employees worked at that part of the factory, textile machinery, and we, the prisoners, worked in that part of the factory, dismantling old machines. And there were signs in the German language addressed to the German employees. Don't give anything to the prisoners, don't talk to them, don't make even eye contact with them. And if you do, you are doomed. One day, while I was sitting and dismantling a machine, a middle-aged German woman on the way to the restroom did make eye contact with me. And she hinted to me like that with her finger. I had no idea what she meant. I was very curious. I had a feeling it must be something important. But I had to watch myself, that nobody else should notice me approaching that indicated spot. Eventually, I did find the right moment, and what happened? I found underneath a box a sandwich of 2 slices of white bread with a slice of cheese. That German noble woman repeated that act of leaving a sandwich for me every day for 30 days, as long as I worked at that location. She risked her life for me, not once, 30 days. Every time when she put a sandwich, if she would be caught, she would be executed. That's exactly what the sign said. Still, she ignored, risked her life for me 30 times. How often do you hear or read about it that somebody risks his life for another human being 30 times? Now, I don't have a yardstick to measure to what extent it helped me to survive, because this was only for 30 days out of 1,050 days. But the question is, why did she do it? What motivated her? She heard on the radio and she read in the paper that I am an Untermensch, subhuman, and she is a master race, superior. Why was she willing to risk her life for a young Jewish boy? What motivated her? What comes to your mind? You think about it. I'll tell you what comes to my mind. Maybe she had a son at my age and felt sorry for me. Excuse me. Maybe she wanted to make a point that not all the Germans are so cool. Maybe she was a religious person and she tried to abide by the tenets of her faith. I don't know. I never will. But I am so grateful to this German woman. She's my heroine to the last day of my life. Not just because of the practical help that she rendered. She taught me a very important lesson. And I'll tell you why. 3 weeks prior to that, a German guard, for no good reason, punched me, and he knocked out most of my teeth. I have no teeth. He was a German and she was a German. They are both German nationals. But look at the difference. One was wicked and the other one was a righteous person. What did I learn? That you are going to find good people and bad people in every group. That prejudice or stereotyping is absurd. Voltaire, the 18th century philosopher, said, those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. And that is what I try to convey to my audiences, that prejudice is completely absurd. It doesn't make sense. The older I get, I realize how important it is, and that is so. This case of this German woman, risk for life for me, is a very important lesson, and the thousands of letters that I've been getting, a lot of those young students tell me, well, you know, I used to hate all the Mexicans, but not anymore. Give an example. They just realized it doesn't make sense. Because according to Hitler, if you don't have blue eyes and blonde hair, you are not a pure-blooded German. You are inferior. And here you have two Germans that they acted as humans. So this is very important in my life. I can just tell you that after the war, as soon as I regained some strength, I went to look for this lady. I didn't know her name or her address. I did the most illogical things. I went to that location because that's all I remembered. And I went to City Hall, pleading with them, let me locate a woman that in 1943 risked her life for me. So obviously, they looked at me being insane. How can you locate somebody if you don't know her name or her address? And I've tried and tried for many years, and unfortunately, I could never locate her. And again, I'm very grateful to this lady. So from that camp, I was sent to my fourth camp, called Klettendorf, also in Germany. At that point, 1944, the Germans started to lose the war, and my job was digging trenches. One day, digging a trench, I came across a raw potato. A farmer left a raw potato in the field. I picked up the potato and ate. A new arrival from Belgium observed me eating a raw potato, said to me, how in the world can you eat a raw potato? How can you take this humiliation, this beating every day? I cannot. I just came from Belgium. I had a wife and a child, good business, good parents. I'm not going to take it. I tried to reason with him. If you would have the experience of 2.5 years camp life the way I had, you'd be lucky to find a raw potato. It tasted better than to eat snow. I used to eat snow in order to survive. You have no idea what starvation means. If you are starving, you eat anything that you can put your hand on. And he really didn't last long. From that camp, I was sent to my fifth camp. This was my last camp, called Waldenburg, a real concentration camp. The main difference between a slave labor camp and concentration camp was that in concentration camp, I was stripped naked. Everything what I had from home was taken away from me. I don't have even a birth certificate like any person in modern time. They gave us a uniform consisting of a jacket, trousers, a shirt, no underwear, no socks, a cap, a coat, and a number, 64735. They never called me by my name again. Can you imagine to what extent you are dehumanized? You don't have a first name, a last name. That is the reason when I decided already to write my book, and I was thinking about the title, the name of my book is From a Name to a Number. This was a very traumatic experience that you don't have a name.